where you're joining us from today. My name is Rebecca Saltzman Barsheshet, and I am the International Chair of the Young Leadership Network, and I am joining you today from Washington, D.C. I want to welcome you to one of our series of virtual roundtables where we will be briefing you on the current situation in Israel post Operation Protective Edge, as well as give you the opportunity to interact with a panel of young leaders who traveled to Israel as part of a solidarity mission led by Alan Schneider. Alan is the director of the B'nai B'rith World Center in Jerusalem. The mission consisted of members of the newly elected executive committee of B'nai B'rith Europe, and they visited the country amidst the continuous rocket attacks from Gaza. During the mission, participants were briefed by senior government officials and saw firsthand the realities faced by Israelis during an extensive visit to the most heavily shelled areas. The mission also provided an opportunity to directly convey the organization's message of unity and solidarity with the people of Israel. Today, they will give you an update about the impact of the war this past summer. Let me introduce you to Alan Schneider. He has been the director of the B'nai B'rith World Center in Jerusalem since 1989. The B'nai B'rith World Center in Jerusalem is the hub of B'nai B'rith international activities in Israel and serves as the key link between Israel and B'nai B'rith members and supporters around the world. Through educational programs and well-established relationships with political leaders of all parties, the diplomatic corps, and leading academic institutions, the World Center works to strengthen Israel-diaspora relationships and interprets developments concerning the Jewish state for our members and supporters around the world. The establishment of the World Center was B'nai B'rith's answer to United Nations Security Council Resolution 478 that in August of 1980 called on all member states to remove their diplomatic missions from Jerusalem. Established that same summer, the World Center is an ongoing expression of B'nai B'rith's active commitment to the state of Israel, the diplomatic corps, and now also let me introduce you to our young leadership panel and mission participants joining us today. We have Danielle Sabone from Rome, Italy, and supporters around the world. The establishment of the World Center was B'nai B'rith's answer to the United Nations Security Council Resolution 478. Daniel has been involved in B'nai B'rith since 1994. He was a founding member of the Young Adult Lodge in Rome, and as vice president of the Adult Lodge, he was part of the senior B'nai B'rith leadership delegation that met privately with Pope Benedict XVI in May 2011. He's also been involved in B'nai B'rith's Young Jewish Adult Forum. Daniel is noted for creating the Comitato per Shalit, which was a committee organized to petition and demonstrate in Rome asking for the release of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit from Hamas captivity. Daniel has a law degree from La Sapienza University and currently works as a business manager in Grupo Hassan in Rome. I'll also introduce you to Valerie Ashosh. Valerie has been involved with B'nai B'rith since 1999. She is a vice president of B'nai B'rith Europe since June 2014, the president of the B'nai B'rith Lodge in Brussels, Marc Chagall, since February 2013. She's also been very involved with the B'nai B'rith Young Adult Forums. Valerie currently works as attorney specializing in gambling law and lives in Brussels. Also, I believe joining us today later will be Lionel Saban. He will be hopefully joining us a little bit later, and he has also been involved with B'nai B'rith for quite some time. He is the current treasurer of B'nai B'rith Europe and also the president of the B'nai B'rith Manitou Lodge in Nice in the French Riviera. Welcome, everybody, and Alan, if you want to say hello to everybody and brief us on Operation Protective Edge and how things are now in Israel.
Sure. Well, Rebecca, thank you for the introductions, and I really look forward to our conversation today and hope to have many more opportunities like this to interact with you and with members of the Young Leadership Action Network of B'nai B'rith. I've been asked to open the conversation by speaking briefly about the security situation we're facing now in Israel in general and in Jerusalem in particular. Now I'm going to focus on recent events beginning with the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli yeshiva students the Gaza war, and the current wave of Palestinian terrorism. Now, I'm happy to report that it seems that we have now seen the crest of the current wave of terrorism that mainly hit Jerusalem, but also hit Tel Aviv and Gush Etzion, and also the widespread unrest in the Arab sector on both sides of the Green Line. Nonetheless, there's still quite a lot of tension in Jerusalem, and as you may have seen as a result of the recent terror attacks, that included a number of assaults by Arab residents using tractors and cars against passengers in the light rail stations. Concrete blocks have now been placed around some of these more vulnerable stations. Also, the Jerusalem police force has been beefed up by about 1,000 policemen who've been assigned to Jerusalem from outside the city to try to prevent rock throwing against the light rail, which since its inauguration about 2 years ago has become one of the symbols of the city, connecting its western and eastern parts as it travels through Arab neighborhoods of the city. And these additional policemen, of course, are supposed to help to impose calm. Now, I'd like to turn back the calendar just a few months to review the events leading up to where we are today. And if we start with May 1 to the period of May 1 to June 11, there were 6 rockets and 3 mortars that were shot at Israel from Gaza during that almost 1.5-month period. Now, those kind of numbers are usually referred to as a drizzle that Israel only responds to in a localized manner. But on June 12th, Naftali Frankel, Eyal Yifrach, and Gilad Shayer were abducted in Gush Etzion, and the IDF embarked on a broad campaign to find them, arresting hundreds of Hamas operatives, including some who were among the 1,000 released in the exchange for Gilad Shalit. Now, on June 12th, just a day later, if we take the June 12th until June 30th period, we see an immediate escalation. Over that 2-week period, there were 44 rockets and 3 mortars shot from Gaza. And June 30th was the watershed, when the boys were found murdered and they were buried the next day. A few days later, on June 8th, Prime Minister Netanyahu accused Hamas of the murders and embarked on an air campaign against Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. And on 10 days later, on July 18th, after Hamas launched attacks against Israeli settlements around the Gaza Strip through offensive tunnels, Israel began a ground offensive, capturing sectors in the north and south of the Strip. Some 30 tunnels were discovered and destroyed. After a number of failed attempts at ceasefires, as you'll remember, an open-ended Egyptian-brokered ceasefire went into effect on August 27th and still holds until today. Now, over the course of the fighting, a barrage of 4,564 rockets and mortars were shot by Hamas at Israeli civilian targets, causing widespread disruption of life, millions of shekels of damage, the evacuation of communities located around Gaza, and the death of 6 Israeli civilians, including 1 child, and also a Thai foreign worker. 64 Israeli soldiers died in the fighting, and over 2,000 Palestinians died, but it's yet to be decisively determined how many of them were combatants and how many civilians. Israeli sources believe the ratio was about 50-50, which is on par or better than other conflicts in which Western armies have been involved in fighting in the region, particularly considering the fact that Hamas, in many cases, used their civilians as human shields. Now, without belittling the bravery and sacrifice of our soldiers and the resoluteness of our civilians, including those who escaped their communities that were threatened by Hamas tunnels and returned only recently after the ceasefire was in place, the star of the Israeli campaign was Iron Dome, or as we call it in Hebrew, Kippat Barzel. Besides protecting Israeli civilians and property, the system also allowed Israel to engage in a pinpoint campaign against Hamas in Gaza, rather than in a total invasion and reoccupation that surely would have been necessary if all of those rockets had hit their targets, as happened in the 2006 Second Lebanon War, causing many more casualties on both sides. Now here, I would really like to recognize the 6 leaders from B'nai B'rith Europe, as you had mentioned earlier, Rebecca, who answered our call in Israel and made a solidarity visit to Israel during the height of the hostilities on June 22nd, July 22nd and 24. As you mentioned, some of them are on the call, and I hope to hear from them later. But I would like to say that their show of concern and solidarity was very significant for all the people that we met in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, and in some of the most heavily targeted areas in the south of the country. In the same context, I would like to thank you, Rebecca, and the leadership for the activity kits that you sent for kids in the south. And now, although it took some time for me to get it through customs, these kits were very much appreciated by the children in Sderot that Aaron Katz and I delivered to them, along with a message of solidarity from our members in the U.S. and around the world. I look forward to working with you, Rebecca, and with on similar missions and projects in the future. Now, if I move to what I call localized terrorism here in Jerusalem and elsewhere, it's really difficult to determine where to begin exactly. But I think I'll start on April 14th, when Chief Superintendent Baruch Mizrahi, 47 years old, was shot dead near Hebron while driving with his family to a Pesach Seder. And he was actually killed by a terrorist who was released in the Shalit deal. On May 1st, Shili Dadon, 22nd, was stabbed to death in Yokneam while on the way to a job interview, and her suspected murderer was recently arraigned. On August 4th, Rabbi Abraham Vallis, 29, was killed by a Palestinian tractor driver near a light rail stop. October 22nd, the 4-month-old Chaya Zissel Braun, and later Karen Jemima Mosquera, 22, of Ecuador, succumbed to her wounds. And on October 29th, Rabbi Yehuda Glick, who was an activist, this Palestinian terrorist, assassination. Two other on the 10th.
Daniel, I'm sorry, can you please mute your mic? Thank you. Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
November 10th, Sergeant Almog Shulomi was stabbed to death in Tel Aviv, and Dalia Lemkos, 26th, who was run over and stabbed in Gush Etzion. Now, during this period, there were 2 killings of Arabs by Jews or by the police here. One was a revenge kidnapping and murder of Muhammad Abu Khadir on July 2nd, just after the funeral of the 3 boys. And the killing of Khair al-Din Hamdan in the northern Israeli village of Kfar Kana by police on November 9th, after he tried to attack them. And this, of course, we've also seen a lot of violence in the Arab sector, both in the north and in Jerusalem, and in mixed neighborhoods, and of course also on Temple Mount. Those who are counting have counted not less than 12,000 incidents of stone throwing, petrol bombs, shooting of fireworks at police, hit and run attacks, stabbings, and so on since July, that have brought this wave of violence against Jews really to an apex. The police here have made 1,000 arrests and have already indicted 300 people. So you can clearly see an uptick in the lethal events since October, in what I just described. Now, what is the reason for this? I have no doubt that one of the reasons is the incitement by Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas. Throughout October and November, he has repeatedly encouraged Islamists to continue efforts aimed at preventing Jews from visiting the Temple Mount, calling on Palestinian Arabs to prevent settlers from entering the site using all means, as he put it. I'm quoting now Mahmoud Abbas. It is not enough to say the settlers came, but they must be barred from entering the compound by any means. It is forbidden to let Jews go up on the Temple Mount. We must prevent this in any way. This is our Aska, and they have no right to enter it and desecrate it. And this message was broadcast 19 times on Palestinian television. Abbas escalated his message on November 11th at the memorial service in Ramallah, marking 10 years since the death of Yasser Arafat, saying that the Palestinians will not allow Israeli extremists to, quote, contaminate Temple Mount, and said that allowing Jewish prayer at the site would risk a global religious war. The PA leader also maintained that rioters at the mosque that the Palestinians had used to store rocks, bottles, and Molotov cocktails for use in violent protests had the right to defend themselves. And he continued with this incitement, despite the fact that Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeated several times that he did not intend to change the status quo at the site, the holiest site to Judaism and the third holiest in Islam, by allowing Jewish prayer as demanded by some Temple Mount activists, including Glick. Now, under the so-called status quo imposed by Israel following the Six-Day War, non-Muslims are allowed to visit Temple Mount, but are forbidden from praying there. Only Muslim prayer may take place on the site, which is administered by the Muslim Waqf, the Holy Trust, which is an arm of the Jordanian Ministry of Sacred Properties, a status codified in the Israel-Jordan Peace Treaty of 1994. At the same time, the Israeli Supreme Court has repeatedly ruled that Israeli law applies to the Temple Mount, and this includes the laws of free access, building codes, and archaeological protection, all of which are regularly flaunted by the Waqf, leading some observers to conclude that the status quo actually no longer applies to the site, and that Jews should therefore be allowed to pray there. Now, thankfully, Muslim prayers passed quietly this Friday after Secretary of State Kerry met Abbas in Amman on Thursday and extracted from him a promise to lower the flames in Jerusalem. Prime Minister Netanyahu, for his part, reiterated in a separate meeting with King Abdullah and Kerry that Israel would maintain the status quo. But tensions in Jerusalem are still running high. And this was actually not only in Jerusalem, but in Israel in general. And this was brought home on Friday night when a violent mass brawl erupted in the mixed Druze-Muslim village of Abu Snan. According to some reports, the violence that sent over 40 people to the hospital, some with serious injuries, was related to the earlier death in Kfar Kana that I mentioned, and also to the fact that Druze served in large numbers in the Israeli Defense Forces and largely identified with the Jewish state. Palestinian violence could reignite also if Israel goes ahead with plans to demolish the homes of some of the terrorists who perpetrated these recent murders in Jerusalem. I'm going to be happy to answer any questions that you might have on these topics. I would like to maybe end just with one comment, and that is that there are actually two issues that are coming to the fore very quickly that we should all be paying attention to. One of them is the Palestinians' intention to present a resolution to the UN Security Council in the coming month, demanding a timetable for the end of Israeli occupation by November 2016. Now, as we've witnessed different steps taken in various countries to extend recognition to this non-existent state, most prominently Sweden, whose new left-wing government became on October 30th the first major European state to officially recognize the state of Palestine, in addition to non-binding steps in Great Britain and France and steps that are expected in Spain. So this is something to look out for that also could destabilize the situation. And of course, the other issue is the end of the nuclear negotiations between Iran and the P5+1 powers that is slated for November 24th. These are two issues that I would dare to call on the train track issues for American Jewry. And I'm referring with that to the unsuccessful appeal of Jewish leadership to President Roosevelt during the Holocaust to bomb the train tracks to Auschwitz and save as many Jews as possible. The mainstream Jewish organizations and other pro-Israeli forces will have to ensure that the U.S. administration maintains its long-held position on both these issues. One, not to allow the establishment of a Palestinian state outside the bilateral negotiations process instituted when Israel made monumental concessions under the Oslo Accords. And two, to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear-armed state. So I'd like to end with that and move to the other speakers.
Thank you, Alan, so much for your report. Danielle, do you see any questions out there floating in virtual land?
Yes, we actually, I have a question, so I have a few, but we'll do one and then we'll see where it goes. So okay. The first one is, for those in Europe, outside of Israel, what was it like in your local communities seeing the worldwide reaction in the media about the war in Israel? Did everyone get that?
Alan?
Yeah, I heard the question, but I think it was meant for our European participants, our European speakers.
Sorry, Danielle, can you repeat the question? It was for...
Sure, it's for the for those outside of Israel. But I mean, okay. What was it like in your local communities seeing the worldwide reaction in the media about the war in Israel? I think this is coming from the fact that here in the U.S. there was a lot of media reaction. Most of it was not very positive. So I think we'd like to see what the differences were in Europe, if there were.
Okay. Well, I can say I know here in D.C. a lot of people that were paying attention, due to the media and the way that it's skewed and how they present it, was not very favorable. It was only a very few that really cared enough to do the research and see what was really going on, that were very supportive of Israel. And you could always kind of tell the difference of those who were aware of all the information and the facts, and those who weren't. But it was very hard not to get defensive sometimes. Valerie, Daniel, maybe you can share a little bit about your experiences in your communities over the summer and what you guys saw and how you responded.
Yeah.
Daniel.
No, Valerie, go.
Valerie, go ahead, ladies first.
In Europe, we are not so lucky, and our government don't support Israel at all. Even in France, we have a president who was supposed to be supportive, but in fact, the French people were not with Israel, and you can imagine how we were disappointed and upset of this situation. It was a sad period for the Jewish people in France.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. Daniel?
Yes, I wanted to say something also about the situation from my point of view in Italy. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And I think, yes, I know that the situation against Israel and against the Jews in Europe was very bad during the summer. But I wanted also to compare what's happened this summer with what happened in the last years. I mean that the situation in general was not so good, but I believe that in this last struggle, the the public opinion was a bit better than in the last years. I believe that many people is becoming to understand better the situation and to give to Israel more reasons than Israel had in the past from their point of view. At least from Italy, at least in Italy, I found many articles in the newspapers and many people who spoke supporting Israel. So I thought that the situation was not nice, of course, but it was much better than some years ago.
Okay, thank you. Danielle, are there any other questions floating out there for Alan specifically?
Let me check. Okay. I know I'm waiting for one to come through, so I'm sure it's could be specifically about that. I just haven't received it yet. But let me check. Now, hopefully it came through. One second. Okay. Okay, so I think what people want to know, it's mostly for, I mostly have questions for the people in Europe. But for Alan, one specifically, did the events in Israel ever make you want to rethink living there? That was one question.
No, they actually did not. Israel is a place of challenges, and I think when you're here, you have to be ready to accept those challenges and find ways to resolve them. And I can't say that thought ever passed my mind. We're heavily committed to Israel, both personally and institutionally. Maybe that, in that sense, I might mention here, for those who are not familiar, that B'nai B'rith has been active in Israel for over a century. B'nai B'rith has been here since 1888, active in many fields of endeavor, even before the establishment of the state and even before the establishment of the Zionist movement. So it'll take a lot more than what's happened for me personally or institutionally to have second thoughts.
Alan, actually, I have a question, and this is a little maybe difficult to answer or be concise with your response, but if you could say one thing or give one concise message to those who see all the things on TV that don't know the real history and all the facts, that might just be quick to come up with an opinion based on media, what message would you tell the average viewer of the conflicts going on in Israel that might help them see something different or change their opinion?
Well, I did a bit of research regarding the reporting of the main foreign media during the war, and the fact is that it really continues to this day. Just a few days ago, for example, when there was one of the car attacks in Jerusalem, the main headline, I think it was in AP or Reuters, was that a Palestinian driver killed by Israeli forces in Jerusalem. That was more or less, I'm quoting, the headline, the initial headline of that story. In other words, not that a Palestinian terrorist had purposely run over and killed Israelis, but that when escaping, this driver was killed by Israeli forces, and that's how the headline was. So, I mean, the first thing I would advise everyone is not to rely on the main international media, not the New York Times, CNN, AP, or any of those. First and foremost, to go into the Israeli media, particularly sites like the Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, I think will provide a much more balanced and accurate picture of what's actually happened. And I think the most important message is what the mission did that I mentioned, which is to come here and actually see Israel for yourselves, whether you've been here before or even as first timers. We just had a mission a couple of weeks ago by a number of European parliamentarians that was put together by our representative in Brussels. They came here with some of their advisors. Some of them were here for the first time. Even though it was a very short visit, just a matter of 2 or 2.5 days, they were absolutely amazed with what they saw. And it flew really in the face of everything that they had expected. So those, perhaps are the two messages that I would have for you right now.
Thank you. Danielle, I think you have another question that just came in.
Yes, I do. This one came from Ed from Chicago. He's our vice chair here on the National Committee. And his question is for the panel, all three of you. What can you tell us about your thoughts on anti-Zionism as being an acceptable form of age-old anti-Semitism in society? Do you want me to repeat it?
Who would like to go first? Did you all hear it?
Valerie, Daniel, go ahead and weigh in on this too. Danielle, will you just repeat it one more time and then I'll let them talk?
Sure. So the question is, for all three of you, what can you tell us about your thoughts on anti-Zionism as being an acceptable form of age-old anti-Semitism in larger society?
It's a good question. Who wants to jump in?
Yes, I can say something.
Daniel?
Yes, I absolutely. I'm sure that it's a kind of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, absolutely. I just want to tell you that in the few days ago, I've been in Berlin in the OSCE conference on anti-Semitism, and it was recognized by many of the participants. Many people were from the governments. The OSCE is intergovernmental organization, so many people were coming from the governments of the European and of the Western countries, and many of them recognize that anti-Zionism is a kind of anti-Semitism. It's a way to propose a new way to propose the anti-Semitism and use that excuse for an anti-Semitism. But we can clearly see that the state of Israel is always demonized and criticized by these people, and they always, with all the governments that Israel had in the last years, they always blamed Israel. So I think that there is something strange. I mean that if it was just a criticism against the state of Israel, it can be done. It's of course, but it's possible that 100% it is to be blamed.
Okay. Sorry, Daniel, you were finished?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Valerie, did you have anything to say, or Alan?
Yeah, well, I'd concur with what Daniel said. Really, the issue here is the disproportionate degree of criticism of Israel. When you look around, you see 200,000 killed in Syria, for example, or you see Tibet, or you look at northern Cyprus that's occupied by the Turks, and and with the hundreds of thousands of Turks being moved into that occupied territory, and other, and many other areas of conflict around the world. So when you take the double standard and the disproportionate criticism of Israel, that I think is what immediately it jumps out at you and proves that this is just another form of prejudice against Jews in this case. So some people have said that it's simply that Israel has become the Jew of the new era. In other words, whereas it used to be a personal anti-Semitism and hatred towards Jews, that now is more easily directed at the state of the Jews, at Israel, and I think for quite some time, people have been who were active in the field were kind of unsure about this. It took us a long time as Jewish activists and Jewish organizations to recognize that our enemies were simply using this argument in order to find another more palatable form of anti-Semitism. But today, as Daniel said, I think it's generally accepted now that this very one-sided criticism of the state of Israel that leaves all other states off the hook is indeed a form of a very deep prejudice and anti-Semitism.
And if I can add something, we can also see this connection we had the opportunity in the last summer to see this connection between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, because during the demonstration that there was in many cities around the world, and in Europe in particular, we were able to see that many people shouted death to the Jews. It was a demonstration against the operations in Gaza, but many people wanted the death of the Jews, not the death of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very good points, Alan. And
a friend of mine this summer told me that on a chat, in a conversation on a chat, and she said to me, she have sent to me the map of Israel, the map since '67, and she said to me that is a real space for the Jew. And at the same time, she said to me, if you appreciate Israel like this, you can go and live there. So where is my land? Israel, France, Belgium, Europe, where is the place to be for the Jew? That is a question now. Anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. It's the same thing now. There is no difference. For me, there is no difference.
Mm-hmm. Alan, you made very good points, and Daniel and Valerie, thank you for sharing your experiences. I can see, this really demonstrates how Israel and diaspora are so interconnected in its representation in the world. I have another question that just came in over Twitter. Excluding the Israeli media, which media outlets, and I think this is for Alan, do you think provide the most unbiased reporting of the Israeli-Palestinian situation?
Excluding the Israeli sources?
Correct.
That's a tough one. I can't pinpoint a news outlet that I'm happy with consistently. Not that I can follow obviously all of the press, but you can watch whatever channel or read any of the newspapers, but I would always advise following up, as I say, reading one or two of the Israeli papers getting a different angle on it, but it's post any, a number of them appear now in English. You can get the Yisrael Hayom in English, Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, Yediot as well. So that would be my advice.
I can also share from my experience. This is actually, it is a Israeli news outlet. However, has a very diverse panel of reporters, including Arab Israelis who also work for this company. It's called I-24 News. And I know during the summer, getting ready for work, things like that, I actually had my my tablet or my phone on and kind of getting an update every morning from I-24 News, which you can see online. They also have an app. For the our European member of the panel, are there any outlets in Europe that are favorable, or are they all bad? Valerie, Daniel?
No, I don't think that they are all bad, but I can't really find one that it's much better than other. It's a very difficult question to give a correct answer.
Okay. I want to take one more question for everyone, and then give Daniel and Valerie 3 to 5 minutes to talk about their experience on the Solidarity mission to Israel and answer any further questions. The other question is, actually, Danielle, do you want to go ahead and ask that?
Sure. I had to, but I'll ask a different one that I think is better at this point. What advice would you all give to us here in the States about how to respond to questions about rising anti-Semitism in Europe?
You said the truth. Yesterday in Antwerpen, in Belgium, a religious man was attacked by a man. We don't know. We didn't identify the person, but a religious man was attacked by a person with a knife. He's now at the hospital, and just because he's Jewish. Just because of that. You have to tell the truth. Now you are Jewish in Europe. You have to be careful not wearing kippah. Be careful when you go to the synagogue. You have to say the truth. It's dangerous.
Okay.
No double talk. Sorry to disappoint you.
Yes, it is a very, I can say for the first time in my life, I think we're all feeling actual fear, which we've been sheltered from for a long time, about the state of the world right now, and what it means for us as Jews worldwide, not just in Israel. So I want to take this opportunity and let Daniel speak about his experience with the Solidarity mission. If you want to just take 3 to 5 minutes, Daniel.
Yes. Yeah. So in July we had a trip in Israel during the war, we had the opportunity to organize this trip. We organized it in very late minutes. So it was very well organized by Alan, and I thank him again for this organization. Also because he had really few time to organize it. But it was, in my opinion, it was a very interesting trip, and I believe that for some people that we met, it was also useful because they felt our solidarity from people who came from abroad just to meet them. In those days, Israelis felt isolated and attacked by the international community. So, and as we said, unfortunately, it happens quite often in this situation. So every single person who travels to meet them make them feel less alone and isolated from the world. This is what they said. They said us. It was very interesting because of the places that we visited and because of the people that we met. We had a meeting with experts who explained us the situation in Israel and in the Middle East in general. The reasons because there was a war, another war, and we visited very interesting places. We went to visit an Iron Dome battery, and we visited the south of Israel, and we've been in the municipalities of the cities that are in the south that were attacked and that where the missiles landed every day for many days. We had the possibility also to hear the alarms, and one of those alarms was really very impressive because we used to we watched many videos, at least me, I watched many videos before going to Israel, and I spoke with many friends that I have in Israel, and I heard the alarms being at the phone with these friends also, but so I had an idea of what it was. I heard one in close to Tel Aviv when I arrived, and there was the alarm, and after we watched the sky and we saw the missiles. They were very high and very little to see from the ground. But when we watched one, we heard one alarm in the south, it was completely different because we heard the missile before, and I thought it was an airplane because there were a lot of airplanes that were going to Gaza. So it can be also a plane. So I wasn't so scared. And after I watched the sky and I saw the missiles, and after some seconds, the alarms were played, and we went inside the offices and downstairs. It was really shocking because the alarm played very late, and we were able to see what was happening to the people who were in the south of Israel. So after we went to visit the municipality of Ashkelon, for example, it was in that period it was moved downstairs in the ground because it was not possible to work with all the alarms, and every time you had to leave the desk and the office, and so they decided to move downstairs where they were able to work without stops and with more security. And after we went to the Barzilai Medical Center, where they showed us what happened when the soldiers and the people injured arrived at the hospital. And for me, one of the most interesting places where we went was a sort of a field that was organized close to a military base, a temporary military base that was created in that days. There was this area, this field where all the people from Israel, and not only from Israel but also from abroad, went there to help the soldiers. The soldiers were able to find there a lot of things to do during their rest. They were able to eat all the stuff that they received from Israel and from abroad. There were the ice creams, and many other things for the soldiers. And it was really very nice to see all the people who supported the soldiers. Uh, I've known that also many people went from Europe there, from Italy. Some friends of mine went there from Italy just to help the soldiers. And I think that it was really very nice to see this solidarity from all around the world, from people who went there just to help the soldiers in a situation and in an area that was very dangerous to be there. So I think that it was one of the most interesting things to see. I don't know if I were able to explain. It's not the same to be there and to explain it, but it was really very touching. And I don't know. We did many other things, but I leave Valerie if she wants to say something.
Daniel, thank you. It sounds like such a profound experience, and thank you for being there and showing your support. Valerie?
Yeah, for me, never I felt more alive. And it's like a confused feeling. You attend to a tragedy, and at the same time, it's a huge life celebration. And it's like a strange dream, and it's the reality. And as said Daniel, on the area for the volunteers, it was like a street fair, like with a Disneyland ambiance. We were it was the war, and in the same times you feel the joy and the solidarity. And I remember when we went to the hospital, we have met religious men dancing and singing with clown suits, and to celebrate the soldier and their family. I've never seen that in Europe, and it was amazing. You cannot imagine for the Nebrit Europe. We have been elected in June regarding the executive committee. It was an amazing team building, and personally, it was a very huge and human and capital and human experience. And I thank again Alan for that, and for his professionalism and for his self-control, because you have to know that his own son was on the front line during the conflict, and his parental anxieties have not been shared with us. So Alan, thank you very much for this experience.
Thank you, Valerie. And I want to also thank you guys for distributing the kits that we created here in America, which we worked hard on, and I know there was troubles getting them out there, but I just wanted to say thank you to you guys for getting them down there and distributing them for us. And you know how amazing it shows really the internationality of our network of the young leaders in America that were able to create these kits, and then our young leaders in Europe that were able to go to Israel and with Alan's help, be able to do that. Let me just see if there's any other questions really fast before we wrap up. Danielle?
Yeah, so we've gotten 2 questions on this topic, and I guess it's really just to end on a positive note. So starting with Alan and then going to Daniel and Valerie, what are some positive things that you have seen come out of this entire, war and media issues and events following the war? For example, all across the U.S., there were a lot of, pro-Israel rallies. People paraded in the streets in the Diamond District in New York City in response to an anti-Israel protest. So what are some of the positive things that each of you have seen come out of this?
Well, for one thing, and this is touched upon both by Danielle and Valerie, really the outpouring of solidarity within Israel and also from the Jews and supporters of Israel from around the world. There's always room for more, but I think there was a real sense within Israel that the very vast bulk of the citizens of Israel felt that they were in this together, that this was a just war, and that we're going to get through this together, despite the really very sad stories of our soldiers who were getting killed in Gaza. I think there was a great sense of solidarity that actually began with the search for the 3 boys and the hope that everyone held out that they would be found alive, and carried over through the war period, and I think until now. I think there's there's always strife and differences of opinion on various issues. But I think there's a greater sense of agreement today on what kind of enemy Israel is facing than there might have been earlier. So that greater sense of I think agreement and consensus. So that might be something positive that came out of this war.
Valerie or Daniel, is there anything you wanted to add about your experiences?
Maybe I want to say that the world were able to see the celebration of the life that Israel and the Jewish people always want to have. I mean that in this war, it was very clear that one side wanted to kill and the other side wanted to live. I think that the Iron Dome is an explanation of that because it is just a defensive weapon, and it's not an offensive weapon. Israel, if wanted, were able to destroy Gaza in a few hours, I believe. But Israel chose to defend itself and to defend the population and not to kill the Gaza population. Also, thanks to the Iron Dome that it was possible because it gave to Israel the opportunity to defend itself and to spend more time to make the operation in Gaza. Without Iron Dome, Israel had to be less precise than what was this time, and had to kill a lot of people. So we can say that Iron Dome saved a lot of Israelis' life, but also many Palestinians' life. So I think that it gave to the world the possibility to see that Israel prefer life and not death.
Very good point regarding the Iron Dome. Valerie, would you like to add anything before I wrap up?
Everything was said, and just to highlight the unity of the Jewish people during this period, it was amazing, and I hope it's not only for this period.
Yes. I also just wanted to add when we were talking about some positives that came out of this conflict, especially this past summer, is I know I personally did see acts of media outlets that began to question and reflect and take a look at their own reporting practices. And a good example is on CNN that did actually say publicly that they have been biased in their reporting, and at least I saw a couple instances of self-reflection in the media and how they've been reporting, and I hope that only continues as they start to self-evaluate and how they report and continue to try to do better. So I wanted to thank, once again, all of our speakers for joining us today, and all of those out there around the world joining us near and far for viewing and participating and asking questions. And we all look forward to our next virtual roundtable. And thank you, and have a wonderful day, evening, and night. Signing off.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.